January 6th, 2016. Two best friends meet for coffee at an upscale cafe in Jakarta. Within minutes, one of them would be dead. But this wasn't a heart attack or allergic reaction. This was murder. And the killer? The woman sitting right across from her, watching as her friend took her final breath. This is True Crime Chronicles. Today, we're examining one of Indonesia's most controversial murder cases, a story of friendship, jealousy, and betrayal that would captivate an entire nation. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that this story involves real people and real tragedy. Mirna Salihin was a 27-year-old woman with her entire life ahead of her. She deserves to be remembered as more than just a victim. The case I'm about to tell you involves Jessica Kamala Wongso and Wayan Mirna Salihin, two Indonesian women whose friendship would end in the most unthinkable way. This story has everything: international intrigue, courtroom drama, and questions that remain unanswered to this day. But what makes this case particularly chilling is how ordinary it began. Two friends meeting for coffee, something we've all done countless times. Yet beneath the surface, something far more dangerous was taking shape. To understand what happened that January morning, we need to go back to where it all began, in the lecture halls of Billy Blue College of Design in Sydney, Australia. Jessica Kamala Wongso and Wayan Mirna Salihin first met as international students in 2008. Both were Indonesian nationals pursuing their dreams in Australia. Jessica was studying design, while Mirna was focused on her career aspirations. By all accounts, they were inseparable. Friends described them as the kind of pair who did everything together: studying, socializing, traveling. Jessica was known to be outgoing and confident, while Mirna was described as more reserved but incredibly kind-hearted. But even in those early days, some friends noticed something troubling. Jessica seemed to have an intense need for Mirna's attention. She would become visibly upset when Mirna spent time with other people, particularly men. After graduation, both women returned to Indonesia. Mirna settled into her new life in Jakarta, working and building relationships. Jessica, meanwhile, seemed to struggle with the transition. She had difficulty finding stable employment and appeared increasingly isolated. Then, in late 2015, Mirna shared exciting news with her friend. She was engaged to be married to her boyfriend, Arif Soemarko. The wedding was planned for the following year. Jessica's reaction to this news would later become a crucial piece of the puzzle. January 6th, 2016 started like any other day in Jakarta. The city was bustling with its usual energy, and at the Oliver Cafe in the Grand Indonesia shopping mall, staff were preparing for another busy day. At around 5:30 p.m., Jessica Wongso arrived at the cafe. She was there to meet Mirna and another friend, Hani. This was supposed to be a casual catch-up between old friends. But from the moment Jessica walked in, something felt off. Cafe staff would later testify that she seemed nervous, fidgety. She kept checking her phone and glancing toward the entrance. When Mirna arrived with Hani at approximately 6 p.m., the three women embraced and settled into their seats. They ordered drinks. Jessica had a fruit tea, Hani ordered a coffee, and Mirna chose an iced Vietnamese coffee. Here's where the story takes a chilling turn. According to witness testimony, Jessica insisted on ordering the drinks for the table. She specifically requested that Mirna's coffee be prepared a certain way, and she personally carried the drinks from the counter to their table. What happened next was captured on the cafe security cameras, footage that would later become central to the prosecution's case. At approximately 6:20 p.m., Mirna took her first sip of the iced coffee. Within moments, she began to show signs of distress. She complained that the coffee tasted bitter, unusual. She took a few more sips, then suddenly began to convulse. Hani immediately called for help, but Jessica's reaction was different. Instead of showing concern, she appeared to be watching intently, almost as if she was waiting for something specific to happen. Within 15 minutes, Mirna had collapsed. She was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. She was pronounced dead at 8:15 p.m. that evening. The death of a healthy 27-year-old woman after drinking coffee immediately raised red flags. Jakarta Metropolitan Police launched an investigation the following day. The initial autopsy revealed the cause of death: cyanide poisoning. But this wasn't just any cyanide. It was a lethal dose that would have killed Mirna within minutes of ingestion. Investigators faced a crucial question. How did cyanide get into Mirna's coffee? The cafe had no history of contamination, no reports of other customers falling ill. This was targeted. As detectives began interviewing witnesses, a disturbing picture emerged. Multiple cafe staff members reported that Jessica had been acting strangely that evening. She had specifically requested to carry the drinks herself, and she had been alone with Mirna's coffee for approximately 40 seconds. But the most damning evidence came from the security footage. Frame-by-frame analysis showed Jessica making subtle movements while handling Mirna's drink, movements that prosecutors would later argue were her adding poison to the coffee. 3 weeks after Mirna's death, on January 30th, 2016, Jessica Kamala Wongso was arrested and charged with premeditated murder. The motive, according to investigators, was jealousy. They alleged that Jessica had been in love with Mirna's fiancé, Arif, and had killed her friend to prevent the wedding. But Jessica maintained her innocence from the very beginning. She claimed that she had no reason to harm Mirna, that she was happy about her friend's engagement. The question was, who was telling the truth? On June 15th, 2016, the trial of Jessica Kamala Wongso began at the Central Jakarta District Court. The nearly 5-month, 135-day trial was broadcast live and became a national spectacle. This wasn't just a murder trial, it became a media phenomenon. Indonesians were glued to their televisions, following every twist and turn. The case had everything: beautiful women, poison, betrayal, and international intrigue. The prosecution's case seemed straightforward. They argued that Jessica had been planning Mirna's murder for months, driven by jealousy over her friend's engagement. They presented evidence of Jessica's suspicious behavior, the security footage, and expert testimony about the cyanide poisoning. But the defense fought back hard. Jessica's lawyers argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that the security footage was inconclusive, and that the prosecution had failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Jessica had access to cyanide. One of the most dramatic moments came when Jessica herself took the stand. She broke down in tears, maintaining her innocence and claiming that she loved Mirna like a sister. "I would never hurt Mirna," she sobbed. "She was my best friend. I was happy about her engagement. I had no reason to kill her." But the prosecution painted a different picture. They brought in witnesses who testified about Jessica's obsessive behavior, her intense jealousy whenever Mirna spent time with men, and her increasingly erratic behavior in the months leading up to the murder. The most damaging testimony came from mutual friends who revealed that Jessica had made disturbing comments about Mirna's relationship. One witness claimed that Jessica had said, "If I can't have him, then she can't either." However, the defense highlighted significant flaws in the investigation. The coffee that Salin drank was neither tested nor produced at trial. It was likely discarded at the cafe soon after Salin collapsed. This meant that there was no physical evidence directly linking Jessica to the poison. After 135 days of testimony, evidence, and arguments, the court reached its verdict. On October 27th, 2016, Jessica Kamala Wongso was found guilty of premeditated murder. Jessica Kamala Wongso was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the premeditated murder of her friend Wayan Mirna Salihin at a coffee shop in 2016. But the controversy didn't end there. The prosecution did not convincingly prove that Salihin died from ingesting poison, let alone cyanide. Many legal experts questioned whether the evidence was sufficient for a murder conviction. Jessica's legal team immediately filed appeals, arguing that the trial had been unfair and that the evidence was insufficient. They pointed to the lack of physical evidence, the questionable chain of custody, and the media circus that had surrounded the case. Meanwhile, public opinion remained divided. Some saw Jessica as a cold-blooded killer who had betrayed her best friend in the most heinous way possible. Others believed she was a scapegoat, wrongly convicted in a case driven more by public pressure than solid evidence. The case took another dramatic turn in 2023 when a Netflix documentary titled Ice Cold: Murder, Coffee, and Jessica Wongso was released. The documentary presented new evidence and raised serious questions about the conviction. Jessica has persistently maintained her innocence since she was accused of lacing Wei and Mirna's coffee with cyanide in 2016. Even after serving several years in prison, she continues to fight for her freedom. Jessica was found guilty of premeditated murder for poisoning an iced coffee served to Mirna at a cafe in Jakarta on January 6, 2016. But questions remain. Was justice truly served? Or was an innocent woman wrongly convicted? Today, nearly 8 years after Mirna's death, the case continues to generate controversy and debate. There are several troubling questions that have never been adequately answered. First, how did Jessica obtain cyanide? The prosecution never established a clear chain of custody for the poison. Cyanide is not readily available to the general public. So how did a design student get access to such a lethal substance? Second, what was the real motive? While prosecutors claimed jealousy over Mirna's fiancé, friends of both women disputed this. They said Jessica had shown no romantic interest in Arif and had genuinely seemed happy about the engagement. Third, why would Jessica commit such a public murder? If she truly wanted to kill Mirna, why do it in a crowded cafe with security cameras? It seems almost impossibly reckless for a premeditated murder. These questions have led some to wonder if there was more to the story. Could there have been other suspects? Was there evidence that wasn't properly investigated? The case also raises broader questions about Indonesia's criminal justice system, the role of media in high-profile trials, and the danger of rushing to judgment in cases that capture public attention. What we do know is that a young woman lost her life in a terrible way, and another woman's life was forever changed. Whether Jessica Wongso is guilty or innocent, the tragedy has left scars that may never fully heal. The case of Jessica Wongso and Mirna remains one of Indonesia's most controversial criminal cases. It's a story that challenges us to examine our assumptions about friendship, jealousy, and justice. As we've seen, the evidence was far from conclusive. The investigation had significant flaws, and the trial was conducted under intense media scrutiny. Yet a woman was convicted and sentenced to 2 decades in prison. The truth about what happened at that cafe on January 6, 2016 may never be fully known. But what we can say is that the case serves as a reminder of how quickly lives can be destroyed, both for victims and the accused. Thank you for joining me for this edition of True Crime Chronicles. If you found this story compelling, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating criminal cases. And remember, in the pursuit of justice, we must never forget the human cost of these tragedies.